Yo, you're watching the Screaming Fish here, people, and once again I'm here for you guys with yet another video, and this time, as you can tell by the clearly very obvious title on the bottom of the screen, we are taking a look at the film Thor Ragnarok, which is the 17th Marvel movie, I think? Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's the 17th Marvel movie. I'm going to be honest with you, I've been losing track with these films because of how good they've been getting and how many they are. I mean, seriously, we've had 3 this year, we've had Guardians, we had Spider-Man, now we've got Thor, so yeah, without further ado and further rambling, let's get on with this review. And yeah, that's about it. I mean, if you came to this video looking for anything else, then what are you doing here? Considering this movie is riding off the back of both Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 and Spider-Man Homecoming, both of which I thought were excellent Marvel movies as well as being great movies in general, I think it's fair to say that Thor Ragnarok had a lot going for it, especially considering that the previous 2 Thor movies aren't exactly Marvel's best. Now don't get me wrong, I don't hate the other 2 Thor movies, I'll be honest, I actually quite like the first one, but the second one is just so generic and forgettable that I can't even remember what the essential plot of the film was. I wasn't hugely excited when I heard they were making a 3rd Thor movie, but then the trailers started dropping, and holy crap did this movie look good. The trailers for this movie are some of the best trailers I have ever seen. The marketing for this movie has been perfect all the way through in my opinion, but now I have finally had the pleasure of seeing the film for myself, and I am more than ready to share my thoughts on the film with you guys. Say what you will about the other 2 Thor movies, there is no denying that Chris Hemsworth is the perfect casting choice to play Thor. I cannot imagine anyone else playing the role as well as he has since 2011, and he is just as good here. In Ragnarok, he's a much more charming and likeable presence than he was in the other 2 Thor movies. I'm not trying to say that he was bad in the other Thor movies, or the Avengers movies for that matter. What I'm trying to say here is that this is a much more wittier take on the character, much like what we saw in the Team Thor shorts. I was a little worried that that would get a little annoying after a while, but I really gotta be honest, it didn't. Chris Hemsworth is great in this movie, and he does a fantastic job bringing Taika Waititi's trademark sense of humour to life in this film, and speaking of Taika Waititi, it's very clear now that he was the perfect choice to direct this film. He clearly shows a good understanding of how to direct action sequences and manages to put his own spin on them, and his sense of humour is present throughout this movie, whether it's through the jokes that these characters crack or certain characters that the heroes meet throughout the film, or even the main characters themselves. And to put it short, this film is hilarious. This is definitely in the top 5 funniest Marvel movies. Pretty much all the jokes hit, which these days is very rare, even for full-on comedies. But this movie had me laughing hysterically in some scenes. It became very clear to me from the opening scene of this movie that Taika Waititi has taken inspiration from films like Big Trouble in Little China and Flash Gordon, and yes, there may be some similarities between this and those movies, but I feel it benefits the film immensely as the tone does contribute to what I would easily say is one of the most enjoyable theatre experiences of the year. I could watch Tom Hiddleston as Loki practically all day. He's the perfect level of charming, sarcastic, and above all, he's really fun when he's on screen, and I have to say, I really enjoyed the dynamic between Loki and Thor this time around. As expected, there are some genuinely funny moments between the 2 whenever they're on screen, but there's also some pretty touching scenes between the 2 that do add a lot more depth to their dynamic. I thought their brotherhood was very strong here, and honestly, it was cool to see these 2 brilliant actors back in these roles after not seeing them in anything Marvel related for such a long time. Mark Ruffalo as the Hulk? Yeah, he's awesome. Not only does the Hulk look fantastic thanks to some excellent digital effects, which I'll talk more about later, but he's easily one of the funniest parts of the film. There's a lot of really funny exchanges between Thor and Hulk. Even when he's with characters like Valkyrie, he's still a really enjoyable presence, and when he's not the Hulk and just Bruce Banner, he's still really good. Mark Ruffalo is still fantastic as Bruce Banner, aka the Hulk, and I cannot wait to see Thor, Loki, and the Hulk pop up again in Avengers Infinity War. The most surprising part of the movie for me out of all the new and returning characters in this movie was definitely Tessa Thompson as Valkyrie. She was just awesome. She was both really funny and she was an absolute badass. She has some of the film's best action sequences, and her backstory involving the villain of this movie did add some much needed tension to the narrative that, had it not been there, would have weakened the overall story. I even enjoyed Karl Urban's character in this film, a lot more than I thought I would. When you first see him, he's pretty much your typical example of an evil henchman who's a little cowardly and a bit of a show-off, but they did a lot more with his character than I thought they would, and I was glad to see that he wasn't your typical example of a random henchman. I have to mention this, there's no escaping it, Jeff Goldblum is amazing in this. If you're going into this movie expecting Jeff Goldblum to give it 100% Jeff Goldblum, then my dear friend, you are more in luck than pretty much everyone who went into Suicide Squad expecting to see a lot of Joker. He was so funny. What they did with this character was brilliant. I will even go as far as to say that he was by far the funniest part of the movie, which is no surprise to me because typically when Jeff Goldblum is told to give a really funny performance, he will more than likely deliver. So as for Cate Blanchett as the villain, yeah, she was pretty good. She was definitely an intimidating presence, and she even had a few decently funny moments, not to mention the performance was also great, but my problem with her character is that I never really felt a strong connection between her and the heroes. She spends a lot of the film separated from them, and all that did was create less of an interesting villain because there's never really a scene outside of the film's climax and one scene near the beginning between her and the heroes that shows how menacing she actually is. I also think that she could have been written a little better, as there are a lot of scenes where she's just giving a lot of monologues about why she's so evil, and while we do learn exactly that, there's just a little too much of it. But hey, there's a really cool action sequence that she's got, so there's that. The action, as you may have guessed, is exhilarating. There are a lot of really stylistic camera angles that do elevate the tension and the visual appeal of the sequences, and seeing as how this movie is directed by a guy who mostly makes comedy films like What We Do in the Shadows, which is a really good movie by the way, they're bloody fantastic. If I had to pick a favourite though, I would definitely go for the opening action sequence and a Thor vs Hulk fight, which by the way is an amazing sequence, and that's all I can say without spoiling it for you guys. But yeah, as you can imagine, it's been featured in a lot of the marketing. The visuals are spectacular. This is easily one of the most colourful Marvel movies to date. It's rather beautiful to look at, honestly. At some points, I was just so marvelled, hey, by the visuals that it felt like I was being hypnotised. But seriously, all the spaceships look cool, Asgard as usual looks fantastic, and even a lot of the creature designs in this movie are very creative. Thor Ragnarok is one of those movies that you can go to with a bunch of friends, get some drinks and some popcorn, and just have a blast. You can just laugh at all the jokes and be amazed by the action sequences, and overall you can just have a really fun time with this movie. It's an exhilarating ride from start to finish, and it feels like it's over in 20 minutes because you're having so much fun. At least that's what it felt like to me. Also, the soundtrack was really cool in this. It had a really retro vibe to it that I thought was really cool, and when it was mixed with the score of the movie, it sounded all the more epic. So as for flaws, I'm going to be honest, I really didn't have a whole lot to complain about with this movie, but if I had to pick a few, I would definitely say that the pacing can suffer at times. The first 20 minutes are very entertaining, but things just seem to move a little too quickly for me, and I don't think certain elements like the villain, for example, were given enough time to establish themselves in this universe. I would also say that some of the green screen is pretty obvious. I know this can be seen as a bit of a nitpick, but there's a shot of the villain standing in the field, and it became very clear to me that they had taken the shot in a completely different location and changed it because it either didn't look good or because it didn't fit too well with the plot. But the green screen was so obvious, and it kind of took me out of the film for a minute or two. While a lot of the comedy worked for me, there were a couple of times where there was a really tense or emotional scene that was really effective, and then someone cracked a joke or a quip, and all the tension and emotion was pretty much gone. Partly because the joke was really funny, which isn't really a bad thing, but it didn't really fit the tone of the scene. But outside of that, I had a really good time with this film. Is Thor Ragnarok the best Marvel movie? I think it's way, way too early to make a decision on that or even compare it to the other two Marvel movies I saw earlier this year, but what I can definitely say is that Thor Ragnarok is one of the most enjoyable theater experiences I've had this year. I recommend this movie to anyone who loves Marvel movies or movies like Big Trouble in Little China or Flash Gordon, because if you're one of those people or just a casual moviegoer, then you will love this. And with that said, Thor Ragnarok gets an 8.9 out of 10. So guys, those are my thoughts on Thor Ragnarok. I do hope you enjoyed this video. I really enjoyed the movie. I think it's a really fun time in the cinema, and I think you guys will absolutely love it. So, with that said, once again, I do hope you enjoyed this video. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And I will indeed see you guys in the next one. So, before I go, I would just like to ask you guys, though, what did you think of Thor Ragnarok? Did you think it was good? Did you think it was bad? Did you think it was somewhere in the middle? Please leave your thoughts down in the comments below. And I will indeed see you guys in the next one. As I've said twice, if I remember correctly. I don't know, I haven't got a very good memory, you see. But anyway, yeah. I'm gonna say goodbye for real. Goodbye.